hello. Good afternoon, Mr. Eddie Bullen. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Good, good. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's always.
I'm the Cool Breeze, and glad to have you in the Cool Breeze experience.
Well, it's wonderful to be in the region.
We had you here back in November, and let me tell you, we were so nervous about, there were so many glitches, this and that, sound, video, all kinds of craziness. But I assure you, we got these things cleaned up, and I'm glad you were on the Air Candy show when you came in November. Now you're on the Cool Breeze Experience. So glad to have you here on the Cool Breeze Stratosphere. Now, we're going to talk about your evolution, your mission, your vision, and your spirituality about your music. But before we get into the meat of things, how have you been?
I have been wonderful, wonderful. Life's been good.
That's a good thing.
Not without its ups and downs, but you gotta, you make it work with your ups and downs. But other than that, Eddie Bullen has been wonderful.
That's great. Now, tell me, what is a normal day outside of music like for you?
Outside of music?
Yeah, I know it's tough.
More music. Jesus. Yeah.
More music.
Yeah. It's just, I try to do a bit of a schedule. I have a tennis match every.
Okay.
Try to do it every Sunday morning with my good friend Ian.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I try to hang out with my sons. I have two sons, and
right.
Trey, Michael, and then Quincy, and we hang out a bit in the evenings if they're not, doing something. So those are the two things. Other than that, Breeze is just music, my friend.
It's all music. I hear you, buddy. Listen, your work has been exemplary. The very fabric of the music community, your performance always sensational. And all these artists you recorded and collaborated with, it's such a phenomenal achievement. And you've always been humble and gracious. That we admire, and you bring an energy to RadioRegent. It's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Eddie Bullen is in the house for those who's just tuning in. And I remember we spoke a little while back when I got the proposal for my radio show.
Yes.
And said I tried calling all my friends that night because I was so excited.
Right.
I was off the charts. I was just wired like a pit bull, supercharged, just to deliver the news that I got my own show. I called everybody on the map, and I couldn't get anybody live. And, just to get that intel out, I called the next day. I couldn't find half the people to deliver the news. And then finally, I start getting people one by one, and they tell me, Cool Breeze, what you're telling me, this was no surprise. Because you had it in you. And then when I called you, I said, Eddie, I got good news. Eddie said, lay it on me, man. I said, I got my own show. And what I'm going to do is bring artists large, medium, and small, and showcase the artists properly and give them the time of day that a lot of networks don't pay attention to. And I'm going to really make this thing rich and organic. And Eddie was right there backing me up. I told Eddie I wanted to be dynamic and innovative on the broadcast scene until it comes to fruition. And so far, I want to point this out. You are one of the persons instrumental in the Cool Breeze Experience show going to new heights. And I'm thankful for that, and I said I have to point this out because when I called Eddie, I said, Eddie, I need some guys that you recorded with. I know some of the music, but I don't know the connection, and you gracefully had that information for me, and I featured quite a bit of them on the show. Thank you very much.
You're most
And
welcome.
I'm proud to say that you were instrumental in the Cool Breeze Experience show.
Yes. I'm happy to be that portal that you could jump through and find musicians and artists who've been, I am thankful that they chose me to work with as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that I can do to help promote them and give them some kind of platform that they can elevate themselves, I am all for it, and that's kind of been my mission statement. You know, with moving forward, I just open the doors and you know, just give the information, because it's been so many years and so many experiences that you know, I'm not the kind of guy who would hold those experiences.
Right.
I just, you know, and they're young players like my son, and they're just, you know, very, very, you know, influential young artists coming on the scene, and they always ask for advice or guidance with decisions that they're going to make. And I feel, I mean, I think I'm still young, but I feel, I mean, I think one of the nicest compliments that I get occasionally is when somebody comes to the studio and I answer the door and they say, I have an appointment with your dad. And you know, and so I have to say, no, I'm the dad, because they know
I could see that happening. You still have that youthful thing about you, and music helps do that living nice.
Well, I think it's just the legacy and the, you know, they've been hearing the name for so many years. They just, I guess, assume that this is a really old gentleman.
Wow. Tell me, where did your love and passion for music come from, and how did that influence your style as a musician?
Well, my dad. I mean, I kind of give you a brief synopsis of what my life was. I was born in Grenada, and I grew up. Actually, I was born to a mother who was a seamstress, and my dad who owned a music store.
Right.
So they were both in some aspect of the arts. My dad played music throughout the Caribbean. He'd been a Decca recording artist. Actually, I have one of his one of the band's album.
Okay.
The name of the band was called the Harmony Kings, and
Harmony Kings.
And they would travel and, you know, to Trinidad and record, and so subsequently to that, he you know, had a music store in Grenada.
Okay.
So that's where I started cutting my teeth. You know, I'd be working in the music store, repairing organs and pianos and guitars, and he'd teach me the trade. So at a very young age, I was tuning pianos and repairing guitars and just doing whatever needs to be done at the store. And I remember he sold my school a piano, actually an organ, and I mean, I used to play a couple of little songs in the store, so I decided at one lunch period to go and play a song. And I played that song, and and it was a boys' school, so the guys just gathered around and was just encouraging me. And from there, I just thought, look, I have to. This is really cool. You know, I mean, when you're young and you're growing up, all you want is at that point is respect. You know, so. And you want people to notice you. You want to do something that's a bit different so that you can, you know, leave the group and be elevated. So that was a really a big turning point for me.
Okay.
So after that, I started really practicing, and then my dad would have jam sessions in the music store. For example, a musician will come off the tourist board, and one of the things that they look for is a music store to just see what they have. And you know, if a saxophone player comes in, he'd want to see what they have, if there's an old Selmer saxophone that he can buy and vintage. And so what will happen is they'd come, and my dad will realize that they're musicians, and you know, open the store, and there'll be a big jam session. He'd call his friends over and say, listen, I have, you know, so and so who's from the ship, and he is here for a couple of hours, and you know, there's a traffic jam in front of my dad's store. So as a kid, you sit in the wings and you watch those things, and you see the interaction between the musician and the reaction from, you know, the audience and the people around, and you see how it affects them. So as a young budding musician, you wanted to be able to do that as well. So those are my humble beginnings as a musician in Grenada. And my dad wanted me to take over the store. That was his dream. Unfortunately, I got the music bug, and you know as well as I do, once that music gets into you. Once you've drank that Kool-Aid, that's it. You can. So I set my eyes on Canada, and my mom was here, so I, immigrated here. I used to play in the hotels in Grenada as well too.
All right.
Myself and my brother. My younger brother was a drummer.
Okay.
So I played the organ, and he played the drums, and we'd go from hotel to hotel, entertaining the guest. So
that's okay. What's your definition of musical success?
I think you're always striving for that. I think no matter how, I guess if you ask Ray Charles that same question, he's always looking for, in terms of, being comfortable with himself. He's always striving. He's 80, whatever, and he's still striving to do something that has never been done before. So I think in terms of musical success, I think when your name becomes very familiar to your friends, family, and it cross borders. When you I guess now when you think of social media, you see people hitting you up from all different parts of the world. South Africa, Africa, Asia, and all over North America. So you have a bit of success, but for me, I'm always striving to up my game. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm always trying to find new things and just pass on, a bit of my knowledge to younger musicians that's coming up.
Right on. What collaborations fascinate you?
Well, there's some of them that really resonated with me as a young man. There was an album done by Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock called An Evening with Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock, and that record really resonated with me. I played that record until the needle came out on the other side. I love that record. There's another record by Bob James and Earl Clue that was wonderful in terms of
did many together.
Yeah, but that first record in terms of collaborations, I mean, I myself did actually 2 albums with collaborators. One with a gentleman by the name of Joaquin Hidalgo, and he's a very fine percussion player. So from Cuba, and we did a wonderful record together, and it's always a joy working with him. I remember when he immigrated to Canada, I gave him his very first gig. Okay. And we went to Cayman Islands, so he landed, and I think he was here about a month and a half, and and then the other collaboration was with a mentor of mine by the name of Kingsley Etienne.
Yes.
So, and we did a thing
Hammond B3 man.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Organ Grinders.
Yes. Wow. Tell me, I'm wondering, your time with the instrument alone. What's that like? Tell us about that intimacy.
Well, there are a couple of things. I'm a jazz guy, so when I sit and I play a lot of jazz standards. And that's for myself, and I challenge myself with some of the challenging standards, some of the Coltrane stuff where
heavy duty. Yeah,
you try to really tame those things, and you get better and better at it, but you still always striving. Those guys have set the bar so high.
Wow, it's just all of the stratosphere.
Yeah, so you still. So for me, I sit and I do that, and I play some of the, the typical jazz standards, ballads. I love ballads, and some of the Herbie Hancock material. I'll play that. So that is for me. I sit and I do that.
Right.
And then some of my songs too. I'll kind of peruse them.
Right.
And start writing new stuff as well too.
Right.
Because you're always looking for new genres to break. Every record I want it to be a paradigm shifting moment for me and for the audience. So it has to be a stakeholder in the ground in terms of coming up with a concept.
Right.
And just to leave a legacy. So those are the things that I work on. So I'll sit and play for an hour, and I'll jump from one thing to the other thing, and then I'll end up kind of coming up with a concept and formulating the concept in my mind.
Wonderful. How does a musician monetize the digital beast in a manner which artists gets paid fairly?
Well, I think, with regards to social media and just the way the industry has gone, it takes a while for the industry to catch up with technology, and it takes about 10 years, and that happens pretty much in every aspect of business, I find. For example, I think the cab drivers are going through that now with Uber, because it's new technology. It's not going to go away. You just have to figure out how to position yourself in it. And that was one of the things that the major record companies were doing, is trying to stifle that, but it leaks. Every time you try to cover it one place, it'll start leaking another place, and it start leaking, and people just find ways of getting around it. However, now I think the rules and regulations are finally in place with regards to the music business.
Okay.
And there are organizations that collect royalty on behalf of the artists, so that the artists now can monetize their, intellectual property. So I am very happy about that. We call it in the business nano money, because it's like little bird droppings all over the place, but like everything else, it adds up. And I'm encouraged that in the future will be a global affair that will give you pay for play. Every time your records play, you will get paid something for it. There are companies that are actually, for example, there's a company out of Montreal called Stingray. And Stingray, if you have Rogers or Bell, you go to the high channels, and you'll hear the music that they have different channels. So you have country music, rap music, smooth jazz music, traditional jazz music. And that company has pretty much monopolized that business. So, for example, if you walk into Eaton Center, you hear music playing. It's coming from Montreal. Right. If you walk into Brazil, in a mall in Brazil, and you hear music playing, it's coming from Montreal. If you go to Montserrat, it's coming from Montreal. If you go to Jamaica, it's coming from Montreal. So what they've done is bought up all the stations, all the channels that you'd hear music. You go into a bar, you hear hip hop, or you hear smooth jazz, or you hear country. It's coming all the way from Montreal. So I say that to say that there are a lot of companies that see a way to monetize music now, and to make a living, and to pay for it. There's a licensing fee for that, and to pay the artists for the use of their material. And so, and that's just kind of one example of several different companies that monetize and check the internet. For example, there are robots running around the internet checking to see what songs get played. For example, if somebody puts up a song, and with a video of a family vacation, right? That robot will find that song and say, listen, that's an Eddie Bullen song. And you don't have the rights to it. So we will pay, whatever monetary, remuneration comes from that, copyright, it will go to Eddie Bullen.
That's great. So tell me, what are your recommended advice for young listeners, musicians coming on the music scene today?
Well, I think you have to be social media savvy. I think that's one of the main things. And it's a daunting task. I think you have to practice. You have to have a mentor. So that you can perform your craft, relatively good, and just be able to. And I think the young people are way better than that, than us old folks, that they have a new website will come on the scene, and they would know about it, and they would be, pushing the music and doing all kinds of stuff. And in terms of the business end of it, I don't think they have that. As they're not as savvy. They're savvy as artists. So,
right.
And I think the internet helps as well too. There's so many tutorials that help.
Right.
A young artist. Develop.
Great. Tell us what impact you would like when it's all said and done. What impact you would like to leave?
Well, I think at this point, I give you a story. I love what I do, and over the years, you just do it because you love it, And there's sometimes challenges, like life, there'll always be challenges, and there are times when the rewards that what you do, help somebody, and I think. I had a moment where I was recording on a record for an artist, and she had her young child there, and the child, was counting the amount of CDs that was on my wall in the studio. Because sometimes I take the artist CD and put it on the wall. When other artists come in, they can see the body of work.
Good.
And he counted over 100 CDs, and at the time, I put the CDs up, never really counted them, just made an average. So I figured in my head, maybe 40 CDs. He counted 100 CDs that was on the wall.
Okay.
And at that point, I decided, let me just figure out how many CDs I have produced over the years. So at last count, I think I was up to 160 albums.
Wow.
So in terms of, leaving a legacy, that is 160 albums multiplied by average 10 songs for each album. So, and those are the ones that got released, and there's several hundreds that, you do demos or you do a record and something happened between the record company and the artist and never got released. So there's several of those as well too. So in terms of, a legacy, I mean, just to add to that, I have sons and young artists that have helped over the years, and I didn't even think of helping as helping. They ask, and I just offered up whatever knowledge that I have to just help them with the industry.
Right.
And sometimes inadvertently doing things like that. There was a gentleman who came into the studio, and he said to me, he says, you're the reason that I got into the studio business. He's a producer. And he says, you're the reason that I got into the studio business because I came and I saw you. Right. Actually, that happened to me 3 times in the last month. And these 3 guys are very, very successful.
Right.
And they came to me and said, listen, I saw you and I got it. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that. One of the guys said, listen, I didn't even want to tell you this, but I just have to tell you that I saw you in the studio and I'm like, I want a studio like Eddie Bullen, and
that's good.
They were,
that's
so
flattering. It's good.
For me, in terms of answering your question, I think that those things make me feel good, and it makes me feel that I made some kind of contribution.
All right, great. We're gonna talk about this boat ride thing. I was on there last year, and I go, great. I'm not missing this one, man. But so we're gonna talk about this boat ride. When is it?
It's August 12th. And leaves at 7 o'clock. Boat would be loading at around 6.
Which location?
It's 333 Lakeshore Boulevard East.
Is that by Cherry Street?
Yeah, it's actually by Parliament. It's right on the corner of Parliament and Lakeshore. Right on the corner. There's a parking lot there, and you just drive through the parking lot. The boat's docked there. It's aboard the River Gambler.
Okay.
So I've been doing that for several years. I took a bit of a hiatus because of family issues,
right.
But however, now I've started back last year, and lots of people who've enjoyed it.
Well, it was great. It had great atmosphere, energy. We had a great time, and when that boat docked, people didn't want to go home because I was in the lot for about a couple of hours.
I know it.
It needed somebody to be selling some bacon, saltfish, some curry goat, some drinks out there. I mean, because I had a box. Ian and I was hanging out, and we had a box out there playing music. So I left people in the parking lot.
It was always a fun time.
Yeah, so I'm on holiday, so I'm in that baby there.
Wonderful. It's good to hear you, man.
I'll be there. And tell me, I almost forgot. Let's talk about the Grenadian Ignoral Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
You were there. You played in that.
Yes, I did.
How was that like?
That was pretty amazing, and I actually like the concept of what they've done. They've sort of picked a genre for every day. So you know, the genre. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And you know, the Caribbean has several festivals, and sometimes these festivals are carbon copy of the other, and they're pretty much 90 miles away. So it sort of nulls one with null another. But in terms of what the Grenada festival did is have, and so that when I played the Wednesday, which was the middle of the week, and that was the jazz week, and I played on an island called Calavini Island.
Oh yeah.
And that island is owned by a French, I guess, a billionaire. And I mean, to stay one room for one night is $35,000 US.
Wow.
So that's where Oprah and Justin Bieber and all these guys go and hang out. So it was one of the highlights of my artist career.
Do you see that as being an annual thing in Grenada?
Yeah, well, talking to the organizers and the promoters, that's what they are planning.
Okay. Wow. And I have to ask you this question. I said I had a bunch of musicians on, and I never get a chance to ask them this question. What it is about a musician and the instrument that mesmerizes women? Because I almost lost 2 glamour girls back in the 80s, but let me be clear, I recovered them.
Okay. What I think, I think
what it is about an instrument and a musician, they send women into a trance, man.
Well, you know what it is I think it's the oneness, and the oneness with the instrument, you and the love for the instrument, Like, you'll see a musician, he puts his guitar down and he's watching that guitar like it's his woman. And if you go close to that rich guy, he's coming over and say, "Do not touch my guitar." You know what I mean? So I think it's the same kind of reaction you would want from, if a woman is walking, she said, "Listen, if that guy is ones that is taking care of that piece of wood like that, I think he'll take care of me."
But some of them actually physically are in sync while they play the instrument. I've seen you play the keyboards, and you didn't go into the keyboard, but there was something very synchronous, like synced.
Well, once I start, for me, I think that's one of the things with musicians. Once you pick up your axe, you become one with it, and it seems like it moves exactly when you move, and it does things, and it comes alive. It'll be sitting there, and it'll be nothing. And as soon as you go on it, and that's, I think, what resonates with an audience. They can see that the musician becomes one with the guitar or with whatever the instrument. Yeah, and that is just magical, and it moves you, emotionally, like love will, like, when you fall in love, it moves you emotionally, and I think those are the things that
come territorial.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, Eddie, did you ever envision after 35 years in the music business you would have such an impact on the Canadian music scene?
Actually, no. I mean, when I immigrated to Canada, I just wanted to go on the road. Everybody talked about what they are on the road, and you hear an interview with Stevie Wonder, and he goes, "Oh, I'm on the road, or I just got off the road," and I'm like, I want to go on the road, man. But I loved it. So, and I think all of those things just are byproducts of me loving what I do, and wanting to learn. I mean, I think one of the things is just really wanting to learn about my instrument and about the industry, and in so doing, I had to have friends and people who wanted things. So, they want to record an album, so they come, and I learn.
Right. Now, for the people who don't know out there, they've got to know this. You're the creative force behind Thunderdome Studios in Toronto. You collaborated with dozens of successful artists. Demo Cates,
Right.
Kojak, Rob Christian, Wahoro, Olita Adams, Alex Walker, Aiden Church, George Banton, Jenny James, Nicholas Branca, Glenn Lewis, Arturo Tappan, Ian Cartel, Ian Wilshire, Kitora, Ralph Robinson, Somerset Entertainment, Shuan Fuez, Rick McIntosh, Percy Sledge, Benny King, Dorothy Moore, The Platters, Solomon Burke, Chuck Jackson, Michael Thompson, Nana McLean, Leroy Sibbles, Toots and the Maytals, Selections, Freddie Will, Jackie Richardson, Jessica Amaro, Kingsley Etienne, Marissa Lindsay, Glenn Ricketts, Kush, Bruce Carrick. That is just incredible. And you're a pianist, composer, arranger, and producer, and performer. You do everything. And it's incredible. And you recorded some of the acts like Melba Moore, Anselm Douglas, Byron Lee, Maestro, David Rudder, Liberty Silver, Deborah Cox, Dee Dee Bridgewater, and you work with the film and radio industry, City TV, YTV, Love and Hip Hop, American television series, Wine TV Australia, QDB Music. When do you find time for yourself, Eddie? It's just unbelievable.
I know, it's I mean, when you read that, you're like, wow. That's why when people come to the door, they ask for my father.
It's just like, wow.
Yeah,
listen, I'm gonna hand you over to DVD, and but it's been a pleasure. I got so absorbed in this because I've been preparing for this so we gotta showcase Eddie, top notch. Bring him in here. We're gonna have a blast at RadioRegent. But thank you again for bringing your love and to RadioRegent and the Cool Breeze Experience. And DVD, who's with me on the RadioRegent, she has her Air Candy show on every Friday from 3 to 5, but she rolls with me every now and again, and the Cool Breeze Experience. We're just an amazing team. Diva, come on in here. Come on in.
It's been a happy family.
Yes, thank you.
For me, you know what I mean? And to be on the...
Nice to see you, Eddie.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you're here. You were on my show in November, and we were learning our technical collaborations here, but I'm glad that you came back to visit RadioRegent. And I saw you last night at the Beaches Jazz Festival and fell in love a little bit more. And what I loved about seeing you and your son Quincy, not only do you collaborate and play together, and he was conducting his data, which I thought was really cute. B flat. That was so cute. But just the sense of community and your sense of giving back, like you were so magnetic. Like people were coming up to you and they've seen you over the years. This one guy had to tell you that he moved down the street for you to come back, and like he was enthralled. Like and your music is like that. It's like a conception, bridging different types of music. Because when I listened to it, I was listening to Desert Rain yesterday, and on my show I played Seduce You, and I was getting a little seduced myself. I said, what a quiet storm in the afternoon, a little boo-hoo. Oh, wow. And I think that like back in the day, I remember there was places in Toronto, all around Toronto in the 70s, 80s, that a person could showcase their music. And I'm so glad that you are appearing in the community, but also bringing the community to you. I see that with your collaborations, with your musics, with your productions, with your students, like Quincy's students. Like they were these little 10 and 12-year-olds that were like, got the beat down, like that little boy Ruben playing Cubonics.
Yeah.
I was like, how old are you again? I asked you a few times. I said, how old is he? So, and then you come to RadioRegent and you let people know, hey, I'm just Eddie Bullen, I kind of drop by to hang out with my homies, And that's a concept in itself, because Regent Park, people are afraid to come down here, and they're afraid to share, and most people in the communities are so busy they can't come down, and we've been really inviting a lot of people and really loving it. So we thank you for coming down here. Is there anything you want to say about your boat cruise? Like, is it just you? Who are your friends?
Oh, you see, that's a secret. But you know, my
Where are all your friends? Come on, Eddie, tell me.
I know.
Is it a big secret?
You are, no, you know, there are a lot of singers. Like I said, I worked with so many different singers and you know, different artists from different genres and different instrumentalists. So I just pull on the ones that are available, and they come in and join me. And you know, like the last cruise we had was Liberty. I think Liberty Silver dropped in, and she did something, and Neil Brathwaite, saxophone, dropped in, and he did a thing. And that was actually the release of Spice Island, so it was a double whammy. However, this time I play a couple of songs, and then I'll introduce a lot of my friends who,
nice,
you know,
so we'll drop by.
We'll drop by and just come in. So that's really what I want this to be. It's the musicians or the artists that I've worked with, and you know, not even necessarily worked with, but you know, who we've been friends, and you know, musicians have an unspoken bond, and you know, it's a platform for a captive audience to experience them.
And last night I was in the audience, but I also had a bunch of cards, and I started giving them out, and I actually was talking to people, and some people were really excited to be going, like some of the older crowds. It gave them something to look forward to, you know, like that we don't have that as much as before, and you know, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I figure, you know, after Caribbean, 2 weeks after Caribbean,
you want something to
chill,
you know,
you know? And, you know, after you soca out and you reggae out, you just want to now mellow out.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Talking about music, if you had a wish or a dream right now to work with somebody in the music industry, or conceptualize a type of music, what would that look like, or a landscape of?
Well, who I'd like to work with is like Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
Right. I think, you know, he's done that. You know, you listen to the records that he's done, and it's a landscape. You know, he's done Master Blaster, which is a reggae thing. You know.
Talking to the Life of Plants.
Yeah, talking to the Life of Plants. You know, there's so much difference. You know, there's some Latin stuff. There's some samba stuff inside there. There's some rock, edgy stuff in there. There is, you know,
and the songwriting. Some of it are like Talking Book and Inner Visions, which are two of our Music of the Mind. Yeah. Those are really strong.
For me, those are the artists that I've listened to and loved and never get tired of, because they've always evolved, you know, and they do something that you not necessarily think, you know.
That's why we like old school, because it's just like our education on our platforms on where we want to jump off, right?
Yeah. So for me, that would be one, you know, on top of my of my list.
You did the dance track in the early '90s from Eddie and Cartel.
Yeah, Eddie and Cartel.
That was a joint. I remember that, and that was a lot of fun. Do you think you'd produce something like that?
Well, I actually, my son's doing that now, and he's doing some crazy dance tracks, man. Unbelievable. I hear him. I mean, he has a studio next to mine as well too. So you know, sometimes I'd walk by his door and I'm like, whoa, the track is killing. And he has a album out where he did some stuff like that. Actually, CBC just played a track from it. You know.
Oh yeah.
I'm not quite sure if he gave you guys.
No, it's not cute.
No, it's not cute.
No. I listened to on some of his stuff on Facebook, and I listened to a track called Slate.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, this guy is like, he has I was hearing Prince, just because of the guitar riffs, because it was so like cultured. Like Prince had cultured guitar riffs that he did, you know, same like Bonnie Raitt and Sheryl Crow, like those are my idols there.
Yeah.
And I still can't play the guitar, but it's a conception. And I like that, and I see that he learned a lot from you in formation, because you could see it last night. I was like, when he played the two of them, they took Superstition from Stevie Wonder, which is a great song, and the bass man was in the back, but you guys, it was almost like he plays something and you play something, and but it was Superstition in your own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we need that here in Toronto, like, and we need to identify that we have artists like Eddie Bullen in our community, not only producing music, but helping others to produce music. And we thank him so much for coming down here today and making us at Radio Regent a fan.
Sorry, we missed the Caribbean Jazz Collective and Niwa. The Niwa group. We didn't talk about that.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'll start with Niwa. Niwa was a group. Actually, I've always sort of, you know, back in the day, you know, as Caribbean musicians, you hear of each other, and I've heard of Nicholas and Arturo from Barbados, and you know, I've heard this stuff, and it was brilliant. And the promoter of the event of the Barbados Jazz Festival, a gentleman by the name of Gilbert Rowe, who sort of spearheaded that whole Barbados music festival. He did a festival in Grenada, and on that festival, both Nicholas and Arturo played, and he really initiated our acquaintances. And I met them, and I said, listen, we got to work together. As you know, I'm Caribbean, you know, I live in North America. You guys live down here. We got to do something. So I got back, and about 6 months later, I said, look, you know what, we're doing this. And they flew up here, and we recorded the first record. I mean, there's a long story. Recorded the record, and at a studio downtown. And about a month later, we went back in to do some overdubs, and the whole album was gone because it was a new format, a new digital format, and they couldn't bring back the tracks, so the whole record was wiped. So we had to go back in and re-record the record, and so that's the re-recording of the record. That is what we hear with the newer record. So that it's Arturo Tapin, Nicholas Branca, Wilson Lawrenson, who is he's born here, but he's from Vincentian parents, and myself. And the name Nua is the first name of each of us. So Nicholas and Eddie, Wilson, Arturo, Nua.
Wow, I was wondering if that was synonymous with a name or a cultural theme or
So I mean, and we did several gigs. We did there was a club here called Bullen. We did a gig there. We did a gig at the Jewish Center. Can't remember on
Norman
Bathurst. On Bathurst. Yeah, Bathurst. Can't remember the name of it. And we did several. We did Harbourfront. We've played in Jamaica, St. Kitts, Barbados. You know, all kinds of stuff. We've done a lot of gigs together. You know, and it's always fun playing with those guys. Those are doing, you know, amazing musicians. I mean, Nicholas Branca in his own right is a producer as well too, and has produced a lot of hits. So, like for example, there's a band called Crossfire. So,
in Barbados.
Right. So he's the guy who produced that. He produced Alison Hines as well.
Atlantic.
Atlantic. He's there. You know, so he's
Red Plastic Bag.
Yeah, he's done lots of those things, you know. So as a producer, we work really well together. You know, we both admire each other's work.
Nice.
And so that was Nua. And with regards to the Caribbean Jazz Collective, that's a project that sort of fell into place. That started with Joaquin doing a residency at a club on Queen, actually not too far from here, called the Dominion on Queen. And he would call me from time to time, as you know, to sit in as a keyboard player.
Wow.
And for me, I'm pretty much in the studio, so I always jumped at the opportunity to to play, to play with some of my friends, and that was actually called Toronto to Havana, because he has an excursion going from Toronto to Havana, so he called the group Toronto to Havana, and then it sort of permeated to. I think James B came in and go, man, you guys should have a stronger name, So we kind of sat down and we all decided we'll call it the Caribbean Jazz Collective. Because what we do is we play a lot of Caribbean stuff. So we'll take a song like Water Bam Bam by Toots and the Maytals, and we'll play it as a jazz song. And then we'll take a song like Little Sunflower, written by can't remember right now, but we'll play that in a ska, right? So we'll switch the rhythms up, So that was a thing that we did, and I think it really resonated with people, because what will happen is the folks who knew the jazz songs loved them, and they loved the new the rhythm that we had with the twist. Yeah, with the twist, and then we play for a Caribbean audience, and they would know the reggae song, and you hear them singing along. We'd play Water Bam Bam, the whole place is singing. We'd play A Murder She Wrote, the whole place was singing. Okay. We would play No, they sing in it, but we're playing either a blues or a jazz kind of some kind of swing thing over the whole thing, and it just resonates. So that is something I've been so busy that I haven't been able to bring the guys into the studio to do a recording, but that is definitely on the burner.
Yeah, I think it should be. And I thank you for coming down today and blessing us with your presence. And I hope you're not going to be a stranger, and you'll keep us informed, because we love Sir Eddie Bullen down here. We call him royalty. And he makes our day. And he makes our shows what they are, and the world is a better place with you and your son.
I'm so humbled and grateful for all what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so you can pick up his music on eddiebullen.com, and you can learn out more information. Also, his music is available on CD Baby and iTunes, so check it out. Because I know you have to get going.
Yeah.